Coffee Break Italian, Season 3, Episode 18. Ciao a tutti, benvenuti a Coffee Break Italian. Io sono Mark.
Salve a tutti, e io sono Francesca.
Come stai, Francesca?
Sto bene, Mark, sono felice perché oggi abbiamo pranzato all'aperto.
Sì. Ma Francesca, non ti sei scoperta?
No, anche se siamo a giugno, siamo comunque in Scozia, quindi c'è il sole, ma fa un po' frescolino ancora.
Frescolino. Well, just to explain, it was a sunny day, so we had lunch outside. I'm in my t-shirt, but Francesca made sure she had her jacket because... what was it? Aprile?
Non ti scoprire.
Maggio,
Adagio.
E poi giugno.
Poi fai come vuoi, ma in Italia, non in Scozia.
Yeah, well, when the sun's out in March, short sleeves, that's the way it has to be. In Scotland, anyway. Anyway, we're here today to talk about plurals of nouns which have irregularities. And this is a great episode because it's going to cover lots and lots of these plurals which are irregular and which you see sometimes, but you're not quite sure how to use them.
Sì, infatti, we are going to go through not all the irregularities that we have in Italian, because that would be a never-ending episode, but the key irregularities that we encounter in nouns and some adjectives as well.
Ok, allora, bando alle ciance?
Sì, infatti, diamo inizio alle danze. Okay, Mark, so as we have just said, we are going to provide an overview on irregular plurals, not all of them, and because we cannot cover everything in a short episode, my advice is always to use a dictionary when you're not too sure about a plural. If you think that word doesn't look right, always make sure you double check against a good dictionary. So that's always a good start when it comes to irregular plurals.
Sounds good. Okay, I think we'll split these into kind of groupings.
Sì.
So what will we start with?
We're going to start with something that our listeners are already familiar with, that is nouns and adjectives ending in ko, ka, or go and ga.
Okay, so let's look at some examples then.
So as we know, this the sound k and g in Italian can change to ch and j depending on the vowels that come after. So usually the idea is to keep the hard k and g sound both in nouns and adjectives, and to do so we must add the famous h, la h.
Yeah. So, for example, if we talked about il gioco.
Esatto. Il plurale è giochi.
Giochi. So, CHI at the end to keep that hard C sound.
Sì. O amica.
That would be amiche.
Molto bene. An adjective, for example, tedesco or tedesca.
That would become tedeschi or tedesche.
Bravissimo. And the same applies to words ending in go or ga. Ad esempio, lago.
So lago, a lake, that would be laghi, Laghi.
Molto bene. And the same for the adjective largo.
Mm-hmm. That would become larghi.
Sì, and feminine larga.
Mm-hmm. Larghe.
Perfetto.
Again, adding that H.
Adding the H. And let's think of a noun ending in ga. Ad esempio, diga. This is probably a new word. Diga means dam.
Dam, yeah. Okay, so diga would become dighe, Dighe.
Perfetto. So this is, let's say, the key point about nouns and adjectives ending in ko, ka, go, and ga. However, Mark, some nouns and adjectives ending in ko don't want the H to form the plural. And this is when these nouns and adjectives are stressed on a syllable which is not the second to last.
Okay, so if we take a word like medico.
Bravissimo.
That would be medici.
Medici, because the emphasis is on the first syllable, on the syllable me.
Mm-hmm. So medico, medici. I'm also thinking of an adjective like simpatico.
Simpatico. So if we divide this adjective in syllables, the stress is on pa, simpatico. So the stress is not on the second to last syllable.
Mm-hmm.
And for this reason, we don't need to add the H for the plural.
Okay, now, if we think of that as a sort of exception to our rule, there's also an exception to the exception.
I know, it's a bit confusing, and it's one of the most common words that we all know, the word amico, friend. The plural is actually amici, although the emphasis is on me. But that's how
it is.
Yes.
And the good thing is, it's one of those words that we know really well because we've learned it way back at the beginning of starting to learn Italian. So we've got amico, amica, then amici, but
amiche.
Amiche.
Sì,
Mamma mia, è complicato.
È un po' complicato, so we just need to get used, and the more we are exposed to the language, I guess the more these words will just sound correct and natural. And also reading, obviously, is a great way to familiarize with irregular plurals because we see how words are spelled, and it's just easier to memorize them.
Are there any other words that follow that same pattern?
Like amico, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Ad esempio, the adjective greco.
Yeah,
Greek.
so Greek. So greco, greca,
Sì.
but greci and greke.
Greke,
Wow.
sì. So the feminine is always keeping that pattern of k in the singular and in the plural by adding the h, but the masculine can be more irregular.
Okay. Right, so that is some useful information about ko, ka, go, ga. Anything else?
Yes, maybe we should also mention the category of nouns ending in logo, like psicologo, and the plural changes to psychology.
Right, so a soft sound again.
Sì, sì.
Psychology. Okay.
Psicologo, psychology.
Okay, va bene, va bene.
Okay.
Okay, shall we move to the next category?
Yes, the next category is feminine nouns ending in cia, so CIA, or gia, G-I-A. And this is more a spelling thing, so this doesn't really affect the pronunciation as much, but it's more like being accurate when we spell words in Italian.
Okay, so can you give us an example of what you mean here?
Okay, so basically when we form the plural of these words, at times we retain the letter E or the English I at the ending to form the plural, but on other occasions it disappears.
Right, so let's have some examples, I think.
Okay, so if we take the word for shirt or blouse, camicia, we have the ending cia, and the plural retains that letter I or Italian E. So it's spelled camicie with C-I-A.
Right, but just to be absolutely clear, we pronounce that camice.
Camice.
Yeah,
sì.
so there's no sort of stress on that I there, C-A-M-I-C-I-E, but that I is simply there making the C soft, although the E would do the same job.
Esatto, sì. And a good way to know whether we need to keep the letter I or not is to see whether before this extending ending, cha or ja, we need to see if there is a vowel or a consonant.
Ah, that's helpful, right.
Yeah.
So coming before the C of camicia, then we've got an I.
Esatto.
And so that is what's indicating the fact that we need to keep that I in afterwards.
Yes.
Right.
It's a trick.
Okay.
Yes.
So give us another example then.
So if we take, for example, arancia, orange.
So before the C of the cha, we've got a consonant, the N there.
Esatto.
So am I right in thinking that that means we can drop the I in the ending?
Bravissimo. Arance.
Arance, A-R-A-N-C-E, as opposed to arancia, ending in I-A. Right.
Esatto, sì.
Okay, test me on another one.
Okay. What about valigia, suitcase?
Right, so valigia, there's an I before the G, therefore we need to keep the I after the G.
Bravissimo, valigie.
Valigia. G, then we need the other vowel. So
Mhm.
I valigia. Oh, well, I-E in this case, valigie. Okay.
E l'ultima, spiaggia.
Oh, no, that's tricky because it's a double G. I am going to guess, because I think I've seen it, spiagge with an E, just an E.
Just an E, an English E, but not
yeah,
the Italian
not the
E.
I.
Okay.
Spiagge.
So double G, E without the I or the Italian E, because there are two consonants.
I like this. I like when we get a rule like that. That was new to me, so that's a good rule. I've definitely learned something today.
Yes, it's something that actually we learn in school in Italy, because it's tricky for us to know whether we need that letter or not to form the plural.
Okay, so what's our next category?
Okay, the next category is nouns ending in io, so I-O.
So I'm thinking like figlio.
Figlio, for example. So let's just work out together. What do we do to form the plural of figlio?
Well, a word ending in O would normally take an I in the plural, but that would give us two I's. Figli.
Esatto.
So we don't really need those. So do we just make it figli?
Yes, that's right. So we just need one I or Italian E to form the plural. And that's the case with most of the words ending in io. They just need one E, Italian I, to form the plural.
But when we mentioned figlio, that's about family members, and I'm thinking about another family member that ends in IO, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that is an exception. Zio.
Sì, zio. Zio is such a short word. So in this case, we actually need to double the I, because otherwise we would just say zi.
Yeah.
It's a bit tricky. So if
Sounds
we
like
want...
a bee sting.
Sì. So in that case, we would say zii.
Zii, yeah. So I miei zii.
Sì, bravissimo.
Okay. Anything else we need to know about IO endings?
No.
Va bene, okay.
Okay. Then something we have mentioned several times is the abbreviated words.
So, like what?
Ad esempio, cinema, bici, photo.
Okay.
They are short for longer words.
So what happens in the plural there?
What happens? Can you remember, Mark?
Il cinema, I think, becomes I cinema.
Sì, so they stay the same. So this is good news. We do need to know, obviously, if a word is an abbreviated word. And once we find out if that's the case, then we are sure that that word doesn't change. Ad esempio, photo can be one photo or a lot of photos, and it's always a photo.
Okay, and likewise, I'm thinking you mentioned bici for bicicletta.
Sì.
So la bici and le bici.
Le bici.
Le bici.
Sì,
okay, good.
Bravissimo. We also have words ending with an accent in the singular. So,
università, forse?
Università è un buon esempio. Caffè, tè, città.
Well, I think if you order due caffè, you just order due caffè.
Sì.
So those don't change either?
No, all words ending with an accent, again, they stay the same. So there is no way to pluralize città, università, caffè, tè.
Good to know.
Which is good news.
Absolutely,
I hope.
yeah.
Okay. Then we have to consider those masculine words ending in A or Italian A. And again, we have to recognize that they are masculine words and not feminine, and treat them like masculine words. So probably the most famous is problema.
So un problema, a problem, masculine. Due problemi.
Bravissimo. So it's not probleme because it's not a feminine word. Yep. It's just a masculine word ending in a. So the plural follows the pattern for masculine nouns. Ad esempio, poeta, which is the word for poet.
Poeti?
Poeti, sì. O autista, driver.
Autisti.
Molto bene.
Ok.
Sì. Perfetto. Everything okay so far? So far, so good?
So far, so good. I hope our listeners are following. I guess these kind of episodes where we're giving lots of lists, it can be quite difficult to follow all of these different ideas. But if you are writing them down, then you've got something to go back to. And as Francesca said earlier, the key thing is getting exposed to as many of these words as possible by reading more, and listening more, and getting as much input as possible.
Sì, esatto, sono d'accordo. Like, it's impossible to learn endless lists of words, but just by reading and being exposed, we can learn them quite easily. Ma andiamo avanti, Mark. We also have to see some other irregular words, and these are words that present some interesting and maybe a little strange irregularities at first. I'm thinking, for example, of the word for hand.
Right, so that is la mano, already a little bit strange.
Yeah, because it's a feminine word, but ending in o. So la is feminine, but mano is an ending typical of masculine nouns. And the plural is, again, a little bit strange, is le mani. So it's a feminine word, but with the endings typical of masculine nouns.
So la mano becomes le mani.
Esatto. And we stick to the body because another word is il dito.
The finger.
And it's masculine. The plural, it's very interesting because, let's say, the most common plural is le dita. So it's a feminine plural word, obviously, but with the ending a, which is typical of singular nouns.
I think the finger is the rebellious word. It just wants to be different.
Maybe. And there is also the alternative, but this is less common, of saying edt.
Yep.
And it could also sound wrong, editi, because we don't use it very often. The idea is that ledita is in general as a group, and editi like each individual finger.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
Okay.
And is there a reason why the body parts have these strange plurals and so on?
There are a lot of words in Italian related to the body that are like that. I think because they come in pairs, usually, and there is still some sort of influence from Latin with the plural in a, which was typical of Latin words. So we can still see an influence there.
Okay, excellent. Anything else?
Yes, the same for the knee.
Ginocchio.
Bravissimo, ginocchio. The plural, the most common one is le ginocchia.
So that is a feminine plural word, le, but ending in a.
In a. So it's really strange at first to see a masculine word becoming feminine in the plural, but with an ending typical of the singular. So we need to get used to that. But again, there is also the option of saying I ginocchi, which is not as much used.
Okay, so il ginocchio becomes le ginocchia.
And l'uovo.
Oh, yeah, because it's l'uovo, masculine, and then in the plural it becomes a feminine word and ending in a as well.
Bravissimo.
Le uova.
Le uova, eggs. Not to be confused with uva. So attenzione, because the sounds are very similar. And if you remember when we talked about Lucca in a previous episode, we mentioned il muro.
Yeah.
The wall.
The wall, that's right. But we also have le mura.
Le mura. So we have two possible plurals. If we just talk about the walls of the house, we would say I muri, like hanno costruito I muri della casa. But if we talk about le mura della casa, it's more like the home, the space for the family. So the meaning changes a little with the irregular plural.
Good to know. Okay, we're almost at the end of our list, but there are a couple of other categories here that we want to mention, Francesca.
Sì, obviously in Italian there are a lot of foreign words which are used, and words which are not Italian, but we take them from other languages and we use them quite regularly. And at times we have to pluralize them, obviously. So what do we do with words like bar, cocktail, computer, film?
I think we just keep them the same.
Sì,
They don't change.
Sì, so there is no need, for example, for the plural S that you would use in English. You would just say un film, due film, il bar, i bar. And usually these words are associated with the masculine gender, unless they have a clear feminine ending like vodka. For example, it's not an Italian word, but it ends with an ending which is similar, which is identical to the Italian endings for feminine singular. Therefore, it's easier to associate vodka to the feminine gender.
And what would the plural then be of la vodka?
You could say, ad esempio, vodka.
Vodka works.
Yeah, that could work because it really mirrors the pattern of a mainstream Italian feminine noun.
Okay, even though it's a word that's been borrowed from another language. Okay. Right, final category.
See, I thought it would be interesting to mention some colors which are invariable, so they don't change their ending, whatever is the plural being involved. And I'm referring to blue, viola, and rosa.
So that's blue, violet, or purple, and rosa, pink.
Sì.
Can I double check what happens with orange?
Now you can pluralize arancione and marrone.
Okay.
I know some textbooks present arancione and marrone, I think, as invariable colors, but you can pluralize them now. So you can say arancioni and marroni.
Marroni. Good to know. Okay. So this is not quite an exhaustive list in the sense that there are other irregular plurals that we do need to know or that we'll come across in our reading and listening. But I would say these are probably the most important ones to recognize.
Sì, esatto. And in the dialogue, we will hear a lot of irregular plurals, both nouns and adjectives.
And that dialogue is coming up after the break.
In addition to the podcast version of Coffee Break Italian Season 3, we are also putting together a full course on the Coffee Break Academy, where you'll be able to access bonus materials to help you make even better progress with your Italian.
That's right. Not only will you be able to enjoy an ad-free audio version of each lesson, we'll also provide a bonus episode in which we'll go through every detail of the dialogues, and a third episode for each lesson in which Francesca will be testing us with some translation challenges based on the lesson topic. Of course, there are comprehensive notes and a video version of each lesson too. Visit coffeebreakitalian.com and follow the links for Season 3 there. Welcome back. Today's episode is focusing on plurals of nouns, and we're just about to listen to a conversation in which you're going to be hearing lots of irregular plurals.
Sì, esatto. In this conversation, we will hear two friends talking about their holidays, and one of them is just back from a wonderful time, a wonderful holiday in Turkey, in Turquia. So she's telling everything about her time there.
We look forward to listening. Let's have a listen then to these two friends talking about holidays.
Ciao Elisa, come sei abbronzata?
Sì, sono appena tornata dalle vacanze.
E dove sei stata di bello?
Sono andata in Turchia con le mie amiche.
Wow, che fortuna! Hai delle foto?
Certo, il mio telefono ne avrà sì e no 3000.
Ma hai visitato solo le grandi città?
No, un po' di tutto. Città, mare, laghi, parchi e la Cappadocia, ovviamente.
Ma per quanto tempo? 2 settimane?
No, un mesetto.
Chissà quante valigie allora.
No, in realtà no. Dei nostri amici tedeschi ci hanno consigliato un tipo di zaino fantastico, leggerissimo e molto capiente.
Sì, in effetti è importante viaggiare leggeri. E avete viaggiato sempre in treno?
Abbiamo usato diversi mezzi, treni, autobus, voli interni e persino le bici.
Che sportive!
Più o meno, alla sera eravamo sempre così stanche.
E dimmi, il mangiare com'era?
Beh, puoi immaginarti, delizioso.
Sono piatti simili a quelli greci?
Sì, abbastanza, ma non sempre. Comunque, a te sarebbe piaciuto perché c'erano le uova ogni mattina a colazione.
Sì, la mia colazione ideale. E è vero che bevono molti caffè?
Direi di sì, anche se è un tipo di caffè diverso da quello a cui siamo abituati noi in Italia.
Ma avete avuto qualche problema?
Fortunatamente è filato tutto liscio, ma un giorno Teresa è caduta dalla bici.
Si è fatta male?
Le sue mani e le sue ginocchia erano tutte graffiate e anche sanguinanti.
E cosa avete fatto?
Abbiamo preso un taxi e siamo andate all'ospedale più vicino. I medici sono stati davvero gentili e simpatici.
E come avete comunicato?
Beh, in inglese ovviamente, ma il medico che ha visitato Teresa era un vero poliglotta. Oltre al turco e all'inglese, parlava anche un po' di greco, tedesco e italiano.
Italiano?
Sì, 20 anni fa ha fatto il suo anno Erasmus all'Università di Padova e lì ha imparato un po' l'italiano. E per guadagnarsi qualche soldo extra ha anche lavorato in un cinema in centro.
Che storia affascinante!
Ci ha detto che adora l'italiano e, per non dimenticarlo, ogni tanto scrive delle brevi poesie in rima.
Ah, un poeta!
Eh sì, guarda, ecco una foto di lui.
Sembra simpatico. Ma senti, l'ospedale com'era?
Davvero moderno e all'avanguardia. C'erano computer ovunque, corridoi ampi e lunghi, pieni di poltrone comodissime e in generale una bella atmosfera.
E Teresa si è ripresa?
Sì, per fortuna il giorno dopo stava già meglio. I suoi zii vivono a Istanbul e lei si è fermata qualche giorno da loro per riposarsi.
Che avventura!
Sì, e la prossima volta devi venire con noi.
I love the way that all of those interesting words were sewn beautifully into that conversation, Francesca. Bravissima.
Ah, grazie, che gentile.
So, as you said, this is a conversation between two friends who are meeting after one of them has spent, some time in Turkey.
Sì, esatto. Elisa was in Turkey, in Turchia, for a month.
Lucky her.
Sì, che fortuna, with her friends, and she's telling everything about it.
So, what did she do in Turkey?
Well, she visited a few cities. She went to the seaside. She even went to lakes, parks, and the region of, come si dice in inglese, Cappadocia?
Cappadocia, I think. But Cappadocia. Yeah, we'll go with Cappadocia.
Okay.
So, she was talking about her luggage. She didn't take a suitcase, but a backpack.
Sì, recommended by some German friends.
Mm-hmm.
And she also said that they traveled by train, but also bus. They took some internal flights and they even did some biking.
Yeah. She also talked a little about the food and drew some comparisons and perhaps some differences to other food she's had experience of.
Yeah, she also said that the food is very similar to the Greek food. They had eggs every morning for breakfast, and she also mentioned coffee being different from the one she's used to in Italy.
Okay. So there's no major problems, but then they had a slight problem in terms of what happened to Teresa.
See, her friend Teresa, poverina, she fell off her bike and her hands, her knees were scratched and they had to take her to the hospital in the end.
Fortunately, all the doctors were nice and friendly and they spoke English to the doctors.
See, but there was one in particular who knew some Italian because he did his year abroad in Padova.
Un vero poliglotta,
Sì,
pensa.
sì, come te.
Oh, man. Okay, so then she talks a little more about this particular doctor.
Sì, è molto interessante. This doctor now writes poems in Italian because he doesn't want to forget the language. And he seems a very nice doctor. Elisa even shows her friend a photo of him.
Okay, so the hospital itself was very modern with computers everywhere and comfortable chairs and further opportunities to use items of vocabulary that have interesting plurals.
Sì, sicuramente. Fortunatamente Teresa recovered very quickly and she was lucky enough to have her aunt and uncle in Istanbul. Che coincidenza.
Che coincidenza. And it just so happens that her aunt and uncle together are gli zii.
Sì, 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 che coincidenza
Che
avere gli
coincidenza.
zii a Istanbul.
So at the end, Elisa tells her friend that she should join them next time or the next time they go to Turkey.
Sì, mi sembra una buona idea.
Anche a me. Okay, let's move on to the final section of today's show. Of course, we'll go through the full conversation in our bonus episode, so you can tune into that if you'd like a word-by-word, line-by-line translation and explanation. But it's time now for Ancora una cosina.
Sì, sì, la cosina di oggi, Mark, è un pochino diversa dal solito.
Okay.
It's more of a fact, a cultural fact, but it's something simple and I think something that you can use to impress your friends, your Italian friends, especially if you have friends from Padua or Padova, the city where the Turkish doctor did his year abroad.
Okay, so what is the expression or what is the interesting thing you've got to share?
Okay, it's a way to describe Padova. Padova is often described as la città dei tre senza.
Right, so the city of the three withouts.
Sì, sì, esatto.
So senza, first of all, senza in the plural is still senza.
Esatto, sì.
So Padua is the city of three withouts. So what are these three withouts?
So, first of all, Padova è la città del santo senza nome.
So the city of a saint without a name.
Sì, esatto, Mark. So, Padova is very famous for Sant'Antonio, who is the patron of Padova, and all the people in Padova have a deep devotion for Sant'Antonio,
Okay.
to the extent that they refer to him as Il Santo.
Okay.
They don't even have to say which
Sant'Antonio.
saint it is. If they say Il Santo, it's
Everyone
clear,
knows
it's taken for granted that it can only be Sant'Antonio.
Sant'Antonio. So that's why
Sì.
he doesn't have a name.
Esatto, sì. So
Okay.
if they say andiamo al Santo, it means let's go to the
Church
church.
of Sant'Antonio.
Sì,
Okay.
sì.
Good to know. Good to know.
The second senza is Padova è la città del caffè senza porte.
So the city of the cafe without a door or
Esatto.
without doors.
Sì, and this refers to the beautiful, famous, historical Caffè Pedrocchi in the very heart of Padova. It's like a meeting point for intellectuals, students, and until the start of the previous century, this cafe would never close.
Oh, wow.
So the doors were always open. Yes.
Like day and night, yeah?
Sì.
Excellent.
Sì. And finally, Padova è la città del prato senza erba.
Okay, so the prato is like a garden, an orchard,
Sì, o a meadow.
a meadow,
Sì.
senza erba, without grass.
Sì. And this refers to Prato della Valle, which is the main square, is the name of the square in the center of Padova. But it's not a prato, it's just a square. But it's called the Prato because in the past it used to be Prato, but these days it's just a square, but it's still referred to as il Prato.
So Padova è la città dei tre senza.
Sì,
il santo senza nome,
sì,
il caffè senza porte
sì.
e il prato senza erba.
Esatto.
Benissimo.
Sì, sì.
That is where we're going to leave this episode. Again, if you're interested in finding out more about the conversation and following it word by word, line by line, then tune into our bonus episode, which we're just about to record now. You can find that and all the additional materials for Coffee Break Italian Season 3 on the Coffee Break Academy. That's at coffeebreakacademy.com. For now, Francesca, grazie mille.
Grazie a te, Mark, e grazie a tutti. A presto, ciao.
Ciao. You have been listening to a Coffee Break Languages production for the Radio Lingua Network. Copyright 2022 Radio Lingua Limited. Recording copyright 2022 Radio Lingua Limited. All rights reserved.